Shalom. World Mizrahi welcomes you to the next lecture in the series To Heal a Fractured World, in partnership with HaChevra LeCheker HaMikra, headed by Israel Crystal. Today, our topic is Chukat, When Does Complaining Become the Culture? Presented by Rabbanit Sally Meyer, Rosh Midrasha at Or Torah Stone's Midrashat Lindenbaum's overseas program, herself an alumni of that institution. Before her aliyah, she was a founding member of Mayanot Yeshiva High School for Girls in Teaneck, New Jersey, where she chaired the Talmud department and directed Israel Guidance. A former education director at the Jewish Center on Manhattan's Upper West Side, she lectures in communities in Israel and the US, holds a BA from Stern College and an MA in Medieval Jewish History from YU. She's also a member of the Mizrahi Speakers Bureau, and we are honored to hear from her today. Rabbanit Sally Meyer, bevakasha.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here and to learn together with you all. It's always really special to see people taking time out of your day, whatever time it may be for you, to be to learn some Torah together, and just it's a real pleasure to be a part of this series. It's an honor, and I invite people to participate. I'll be asking questions. I always like to learn in an interactive way, so you can send chats or. I don't know if the technology here allows you to unmute yourself, but if it does, you can share out loud, and we will begin. So the truth is actually that the topic, when we're talking about the Parsha now, is actually very challenging, as I'm sure you know, because in Israel we are a Parsha ahead of Chutz La'aretz, of diaspora, because of that last day of Pesach a couple months ago, and we still haven't gotten back on track. So I actually chose a topic that really spans a few parshiot that we're in the middle of, all of us, no matter who we are and where we are. And I called it, When Does Complaining Become the Culture? And I wanted to share with you some thoughts, and share with you some of Rabbi Sacks's thoughts and insights into this question of the complaints of Bnei Israel, the complaints that the Jewish people were constantly involved with in the desert. And so I wanted to, I'll share my screen with you. Okay. And someone want to give me a thumbs up that you can see the screen. I hope that you can see it. It says at the top, I'm sharing. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Michelle, for that. Okay, so I'm going to start with Parshat Chukat, which is this coming week's Parsha for me, and for any of you who are in Chutz La'aretz, it's in another week and a half. But we'll start from there, but we could really start anywhere. Okay, but if you look at this first source here, would anyone like me to make it bigger? Would that be helpful to people? Can see if I can make it a little bit bigger to make it a little bit easier for you to see. Find the Zoom. Okay, let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Sorry, it's taking a minute. View. Okay, Zoom. Okay, one sec. Let's see if I can. Okay. I'm not sure if I just made it bigger. It does not look like it. Here I see what I can do. Okay. I'm having some trouble making it bigger. If anyone wants to look at it, I see. I got it. Okay. Let's see if I can just make it a tiny bit bigger for you guys. 25. Okay. All right. It's a little bit bigger. I hope that that's helpful. Okay, we're going to start with Bamidbar Parakaf. This is in Parshat Chukat. Okay, it says, Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'edam midbar tzin b'chodesh harishon. Okay, so all of b'nei Yisrael, all the Jewish people, come to the desert of Tzin in the first month, in Nisan. Vayeshav am b'kadesh, and the nation settles in Kadesh, okay? This is actually like at the end of the 40 years. We're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, okay? And Miriam dies, and she is buried there. And then the Torah says, "V'lo mayim la'eda," and there was no water for the people, for the congregation. Vayikalu al Moshe v'al Aaron, and they gather upon Moshe and Aaron, not near, not next to, not towards, right? But on, like as though they're attacking them. And then the pasuk makes it clear, Vayarav ha'am Moshe, the nation fights with Moshe. Vayomru, and they said, Lemor lulu gavanu bigvachenu lifnei Hashem. We wish we had died in the death of our brothers before God. Okay, now this is Parshat Chukat, right after Parshat Korach. What is the death of our brethren before God? Okay, that seems to be referring to the plague that happens at the end of Parshat Korach, right? The plague that happens at the end of the parsha that we just read in Eretz Yisrael, and we will read soon in Chutz La'aretz, where after the nation complains, after Korach, after the whole rebellion of Korach, so there's a plague, and the plague is only stopped when Aaron brings Ketoret, brings incense, and stops the plague. Okay, so the people are complaining, and they're saying, we wish we had died in the plague. Why? Why did you bring the nation of God to this desert to die? For us to die and our cattle. And why did you even take us out of Egypt? To bring us to this terrible place, this evil place. And it's not a place of seeds and figs and grapes and pomegranates, and there's no water to drink. Okay, so does this sound familiar to anybody? Does this complaint that we have nothing to drink and why'd you take us out of Egypt, does that sound familiar to you? It sounds very familiar, right? Because doesn't it seem like the Jewish people constantly say that, right? Like they say that all the time in the desert, right? So let's look at so there was this was actually something that at some point, like a few years ago, it was kind of bothering me. Like there's so many complaints, but sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes Hashem gets angry. And I sort of wanted to try to figure out what's the secret? You know what I'm saying? Like when is this complaint met with acceptance and with giving them what they need, and when, or what they're asking for, and when is it met with a punishment and anger? Okay, and we see that it's sometimes this and sometimes that. Okay, so we're going to, let's have a look at the response in this case, which is, again, this is towards the end of their time in the desert. We'll take this as an example, and then we're going to go back and look at other examples and try to compare and contrast them and try to understand what is really going on. What is the code? What's the secret? Okay, so Moshe and Aaron, in response to the people's saying, why'd you take us out of Egypt? And you brought us to this terrible place and we have nothing to drink, right? So it says that God said to Moshe, saying, take your staff, and gather the people together, you and your brother Aaron, and you should speak to the rock in front of them, and it will give forth its water. And you should take out water from the rock, from the stone, and you should give them to drink, the nation and their cattle. And we know what happens in this story, right? This story is the one in which Moshe and Aaron do gather the people, and he takes his mateh, he takes his staff. But what happens? It says that Moshe took the mateh from before God as he was commanded, but vayakilu Moshe v'Aaron et hakal al pnei hasela, he gathers them, vayomer lahem, and Moshe says to them, shimu nahamorim, listen, one of them says, listen, you rebellious people, hamin hasela hazen notzi lachem mayim, from this rock will we bring forth water. And Moshe raises his hand, strikes the selah, strikes this rock with his staff twice, and lots of water comes out, and the people drink. Okay, so this is the famous sin of Moshe, right? Moshe did not listen to what God wanted. He didn't speak to the rock. He hit the rock, right? Or maybe it's because there are lots of interpretations of what Moshe did wrong here. We know he did something wrong because he's punished for it. God says that he's not going to allow Moshe to go into Eretz Yisrael. He will no longer lead the Jewish people. But there are a bunch of different interpretations. Why is that? Is it because he hit the rock instead of speaking to it? Is it because he got angry with them and he called them rebellious? Is it because he said, from this rock, notzi lachem mayim, we will bring forth water, right? As though it was him and Aaron who were bringing forth the water and not Hashem, right? And so a bunch of different interpretations. I'm actually not going to focus on that, on what exactly the sin was, although that's a fascinating topic. But what I want to focus on is that what was God's response to this request? The request was, it wasn't exactly a request. They fight with Moshe, right? They say, we wish we had died in a plague, or we wish we were back in Mitzrayim. Why'd you take us out just to die here? And what is Hashem's answer to that answer? What is Hashem's answer? Not Moshe's, but what is Hashem's answer? Let's give you water, right? God in this story does not get angry. Hashem does not get angry. He says to Moshe and Aaron, take your staff, go speak to the rock and bring forth water. And that's what Moshe and Aaron were supposed to do. They didn't do that exactly, right? And that's why they were punished. But if we think about what Hashem's response was, yeah, let's give you water. Okay. So what is the secret? Why here does Hashem not get angry, right? Whereas we remember that in some other cases he does. So let's have a look. I made a little chart, okay, of the different complaints, okay, meaning I brought you the case in Chukat, which is like kind of the next parsha coming up for us. But I wanted to go back and have a look at all the different complaints and solutions that are given, and for us to together try to come up with what that secret is, okay? So let's begin with the first complaint. Okay, the first complaint is here in this chart in Bishalach. This is going back many years, right? Going back almost 40 years. And we just left Egypt. And we are at the Yam Suf. We are right in front of the sea. The Egyptians are behind us. The sea is in front of us. And Am Yisrael say to Moshe, "Hamibli en kvarim b'Mitzrayim lekachtanu lamut b'midbar. Ma zot asita lanu lotzianu miMitzrayim." Are there no graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the desert? Why have you taken us out of Mitzrayim? That's what we told you. We said, leave us alone. We'll serve the Egyptians, because it is better to serve the Egyptians, to be slaves to the Egyptians, than it is to die in the desert. And that is their first complaint. It actually is one of the, for those who like to follow these things, it's an example of sarcasm in the Torah. Okay, the Torah is usually just says everything straight. But Hamibli and Kvarim b'Mitzrayim, are there not enough graves in Egypt? Right? That's a sarcastic comment on the part of Am Yisrael. Okay, and so fine. So that's what they say. And Moshe's answer to them is, don't worry. Hashem yilachem lachem. God will fight for you, and you will just be quiet. And God splits the sea. Does anyone want to suggest why does Hashem not get angry, or why does Moshe not get angry there, when the people basically are kind of rejecting the good thing that happens, which is being taken out of Egypt, right? They were taken out of Egypt. And what kind of chutzpah is that to say to Moshe, what, are there not enough graves in Egypt? You took us out to the desert, because there weren't enough places to bury us. Does anyone want to suggest why is this complaint met with equanimity by both Hashem and by both Moshe and Hashem? Does anyone want to suggest? You can put it into the chat. Oh, someone said something in the chat. Okay, excellent. Okay, so Michelle says they just left Egypt, right? They still had the slave mentality. And truly, that's it, meaning there's an educational process that has to happen when we go out of Egypt and we begin to worship Hashem, and we are now free of our slavery and really have a new master, Hashem, right? That takes us time. It takes us time to develop that emunah. And we still, and they were wishing to go back to Egypt because it was familiar, because it was easy. And it seems like Moshe and Hashem both understand that, right? And they say, okay, you know what? Don't worry. It's like if one of our children, right, said to us, oh, I'm scared, why'd you bring me here, to this place that I'm scared of? And you say, don't worry, sweetie, it's going to be okay. This is going to be a great, plane ride or car ride or roller coaster ride or whatever, or like, don't worry, I'm going to protect you, okay, from whatever is going on. And we don't get angry with our child for getting upset and scared. We say, listen, we're going to take care of you. Watch. Okay. And that's exactly what happens here. So that's our first complaint. Okay. The next complaint comes in, it's not exactly a complaint, but I'm going to put it in that category. I'm putting whenever they ask for water or food or say they don't like stuff, whatever it is. Okay. Right, and I'll call it a complaint. Okay, we have actually somebody else saying that because the complaints were related to a physical need, not to a fabrication. Okay, that's a really, really interesting answer. Thank you so much, whoever wrote that, Kay. Okay, that perhaps the reason that Hashem is not angry when they say that they, that they wish they had gone back to Egypt when the sea is in front of them and the Egyptians are behind them is because that's natural. Like they're about to die. They're either about to be killed by the Egyptians or taken captive back, dragged back, right? Or drowning in the sea. So that's quite reasonable, right? Why they would be upset. We can understand that. And maybe there are other cases where we don't find it so reasonable. So let's actually test these theories. Is Hashem always sort of forgiving at the beginning and then less forgiving later, right? And also, is the nature of the request being a physical need, right, or a more reasonable kind of request? Does that make a difference? Okay, so let's see. So in Beshalach, we get to Marah, right? After the splitting of the sea, we get to a place where the water is bitter, and the people say, Ma nishteh. They say to Hashem, they say to Moshe, what are we going to drink? Right? And they're very worried about what they're going to drink. It says, Vayilonu, the reason I'm calling it a complaint is the full text of the pasuk is Vayilonu ha'am al Moshe lemor ma nishteh. They complain to Moshe and they say, what shall we drink? And what is the response? A branch that sweetens the water, right? A special branch that Moshe puts, right? Hashem shows him a branch, he puts it into the water and it sweetens the water. Okay. And once again, we have, it's right at the beginning, meaning both of your theories still are holding water. Okay, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. That the theories are good. First of all, it's at the beginning, and second of all, it's quite a reasonable request. They don't have anything to drink, and they would like some water, right? And they need water. Okay. The third case of the complaint, okay, is also in Parshat Beshalach, okay? And the full text there is that they go from Elim, okay, where they had found water, and they go to Midbar Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, and they're on the 15th day of the second month. So they've been out of Egypt for 1 month, okay, because they left on the 15th day of the first month, right? That's Pesach. And now they are coming on the 15th day of Iyar, right? And they get to this place, Vayilonu, the Torah says, and they complained, all of Am Yisrael on Moshe and Aaron and the Midbar, and they said, it says that Bnei Yisrael said to them, Mi yitain mutenu biyad Hashem be'eretz Mitzrayim. We wish we had died at the hand of God in Egypt, b'shivtenu al sir habasar, when we were sitting on the flesh pots, ba'ochlenu lechem lasova, when we had all the food we needed. We wish we had died at the hands of God. Again, we wish we had died in a plague, maybe makat bechorot. If only we had not been taken out of Egypt to just starve here. And then the end of that pasuk says, Ki yotzetem otanu el hamidbar hazeh lahamit et kol hakahal hazeh bara'av. You took us out of that land to kill us all with famine. Okay, and what is Hashem's response? Hashem's response is Slav in the evening. okay, the quail, right, in the evening, and man in the morning. That is Hashem's response. Hashem says to Moshe, I am going to rain down bread from heaven. The people will go out and take it, okay? And Moshe and Aaron turn to Am Yisrael and say, in the evening, you're going to see that God took me out of Mitzrayim, and in the morning, you're going to see the glory of God. He heard your complaints, and he's going to give you meat in the evening and bread in the morning, and you will see that Hashem, Hashem is the best, right? And that's in fact what happened. And so once again, we have this complaint. They're hungry, right? They're hungry for food. Previous to this, it was that they didn't have water. Now they don't have food, and they are receiving food. And Hashem says, Moshe, it seems like Moshe and Hashem are using this as this teachable moment, right? So far we have right at the beginning, okay? And we have requests that are not necessarily formulated in the nicest way, right? Why did you take us out of Egypt? What did you plan to just kill us in the desert? Wish we were back in Egypt, right? All that kind of stuff. But it's met with a calm response, a caring response, and basically giving them what they need. And similarly, in source 4, we have in Bishalach, once again, okay, we have another episode, this time in Perek Tet Zayin, okay, where they go to Refidim, and it says, Vayarev ha'am al Moshe v'al Aharon, Vayarev ha'am im Moshe v'yamru tnu lanu mayim v'nishteh. They say, give us water and we'll drink. And Moshe said to them, why are you arguing with me? Why are you testing God? The people were thirsty there for water. They complained to Moshe. Vayomer. Okay, and here is where picking up on your sheet. Why did you take us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and my animals with thirst? Okay, what happens in that story? It says, Moshe cries out to God and says, what can I do? They're going to kill me. And Hashem says, go in front of them, take some of the elders of Israel, take your staff that you hit the Nile with, and I'm going to stand there on the rock, and you will hit the rock, and the water will come out. And Moshe does that in front of the elders, and that place is called Masa Umeriva. Water comes from the rock after he was told to hit the rock, and he hits the rock. Okay, so here we have 4 cases, and I think that both of the 2 explanations that you all brought up here are very, very appropriate in all of these cases. They're asking for reasonable things. They may not be asking in a good way, but Hashem gives them what they need. Now, you could ask a question on all of this, right? Does anyone have a question on all of this? They get to a place and, they get to the sea, and there's the sea in front of them and the Egyptians behind them, and they're terrified and they have to scream to Hashem. They get to Marah and they don't have water, and they say, what are we going to drink? They have no food and they're starving, and they say, we wish we had died in Egypt, right? They get another place in Bishalach and they have no water, and, Hashem has Moshe hit the rock, right? If you were the logistics coordinator, okay, so Michelle says they're not learning to trust. Okay, great. So I'm going to sort of amplify that a little bit by asking the following question. If you were the logistics coordinator, okay, of this trip in the desert, okay, what would you do? Right? Let's see, we have in the chat, right? Why do they need to cry out? Kineret says, why do they need to cry out in order to get their needs? And that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. There's something really strange going on, like they're not asking for, for extras here. They're asking for food and water. They're asking for not being killed either by the sea or by the Egyptians. These are not unreasonable requests, right? And if you were the logistics coordinator of the trip through the desert, you might have given everyone a canteen, had a water filling station, right? If you were going to rain down bread, maybe rain down bread before they're starving, right? Meaning there's something a little bit funny, okay, as you said, about they're needing to ask in order to get their needs, right? So what's the answer? Meaning Hashem is the best at everything, right? He's got to be also the best at logistics, created the whole world and runs it. So why does Hashem do it that way? Why do the people have to cry out each time in order to get their needs? Does anyone have an idea? It's a really good question. So I think actually the answer to that question, I think is actually found later in Sefer Devarim, where the Torah says that basically the whole desert experience was a test, right? It says, Vaya'ancha, vayarivecha, vayachilcha et haman, right? God oppressed you and made you hungry and gave you the man asher lo yadata v'lo yadun avotecha, okay? This is in Devarim Parak Chat, the Devarim chapter 8, Pasuk Gimel, verse 3. I don't have it on your sheet, but I'll read it to you. It says, Vaya'ancha, vayarivecha, vayachalcha et haman asher lo yadata v'lo yadun avotecha, that he gave you the man that you didn't know and your parents didn't know. Laman hodiacha ki lo ala lechem levado yichya adam ki al kol motza pi Hashem yichya adam. To teach you that people do not live by bread alone; they live by what comes out of the mouth of God. Okay, okay. So someone just raised, if this is 40 years, why is the new generation still behaving like their parents? And we're going to come back to that. Meaning we started at year 40, right? Okay, or 39. We are now back in time and we're looking at the parents, and then we're going to come back to the present. I mean, not the present, but the present in the parshiot that we're in now in Sefer Bamidbar, which is year 39, 40, whatever it is. And we will address your question, which is exactly the question I want to get to. So the Torah tells us later that the reason that Hashem is giving them these trials is actually to teach them. It's like an Emunah class, basically. And it's to teach them, to have them feel the lack of something, cry out to God, and then God provides for them. And that way they understand that it's not just like my canteen happened to be full and I walked out in the morning and I happened to find bread, but that this is a response to the request of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. And we are being taken care of by God. And this is part of the lesson, right? If you think about like what happened in the desert is this tabula rasa, right? It's this empty place. And so and it's also a very thirsty place, you can't find water easily. So if you could, in order to survive, and it's hard to find food also. So if you survive in a desert, because God miraculously gives you water and miraculously gives you bread, right? And meat, that is so clearly the hand of Hashem, right? They're going into the regular world, right? They're going into the world, they're going into a regular land, okay? Back to a place that's, not exactly like Egypt, but I'm saying more like Egypt than a desert, right? In that it is a settled land and it has water sources and it has food and it has vineyards and it has houses, right? You're not going to be constantly on the move and you're not living this nomadic existence, right? And Hashem wants Am Yisrael, wants the Jewish people to recognize God's place in the world, even when we're in our regular lives. And how do you train the people to do that? So you train them by showing them that, here, look, I'm going to provide for you. So then when the rain comes in Israel, you can say, oh, that is from God. I know rain is a natural phenomenon, but in Eretz Yisrael, it comes when Hashem's happy with us, and it doesn't come when Hashem's not happy with us, right? And same thing with our crops and all of that. And a lot of Sefer Devarim is essentially taking those messages and translating them and saying, oh, you know what's going to happen? You're going to build houses and you're going to plant vineyards, right? And then you're going to say, oh, it was all my doing. But actually, you have to remember that God gives you the capacity to do everything that you do. And it's almost like saying, remember what it was like in the desert where you were totally dependent? So you're not, now there's a mixture of your hishtadlut, your work, and God's help. But don't forget that God's help is always there. Don't forget that, right? And Hashem is wanting maybe, right, to give the people that message. And perhaps that is why Hashem does things in this way and has them crying out. And also why He's not angry that they cried out in that way. Okay, so now let's turn to the complaints that God is angry about. Okay, let's go have a look at some of these other complaints because there are complaints that Hashem does not respond positively to. Okay, so the first 4 were great. Okay, the next 4, not so great. Okay, so let's have a look. Parshat Ba'alotcha. Okay, it says, the people were like complainers, evil in the eyes of God. Okay, and they were and they began to complain. Okay, just looking for the. Okay, 1 second. I have a much broader. Description of, right, so this is at the very beginning, the Mitonanim. It doesn't say there what they complained about. It says that the people were evil complainers in the eyes of God. This is right at the beginning, or not right at the beginning, but close to the beginning of Parshat Ba'alotcha, right? It says that it's in Perek Yud Aleph, okay? So actually I shouldn't say that. It's really towards the end of Parshat Ba'alotcha. It's in Shishi, so it's actually towards the end, my mistake. But it says, Vayi am ki mitzonanim ra b'nei Hashem, vayishma Hashem, vayichar po, v'tiv'ar b'nei Hashem, v'tochal b'ktei hamachaneh. They're complaining in the eye, evilly in the eyes of God. God hears, he gets angry, and a fire comes and eats at the edge of the camp. Okay, and then the people cry out to Moshe, and the fire abates, and they call it Taveira. Ki bara b'nei Hashem. Why does Hashem get angry here? What's going on here? So here, it's still like, towards the beginning, right? But we don't see what they're complaining about, right? It doesn't say that they were thirsty. It doesn't say that they were hungry. They were just complaining. And Hashem gets angry with that. Hashem says, no, you can't do that. So maybe this is, let's look at the chat 1 second. It's a complaint for the complaint's sake. It says, lahachis, right? It sounds a lot like it's just complaining, right? It's just stum, right? For no reason, okay? They're just, things are bad. I don't like this, right? And Hashem is angry with that. What are you saying? I'm taking you through the desert. We're on our way to Eretz Yisrael, right? Michelle says they're not being thankful, right? Like when you think about it, there is so much of the Jewish people have to be thankful for, right? I always think about this in Dayenu, right? The song that we sing at the Seder, Dayenu, right? So there's it's a kind of a funny song in a way, because if you really look at the words, it's a little hard to understand sometimes, right? Like, Dayenu, if God had, taken us out of Egypt but hadn't split the sea, that would have been enough. And you're kind of like, would that have been enough? I mean, we would have either drowned or been killed or taken captive by the Egyptians. So why would that have been enough, right? Or if God had brought us to our Sinai but not given us the Torah, we would have just looked around and said, like, nice mountain. I don't know, like, would that have been fine, right? Or if Hashem had had not given us the man, that would have been okay. Like, no, we would have starved, right? So that's not really okay. But the truth is that I actually, it's actually as a result of a challenging experience my family went through. We had a preemie, this is 16 years ago, thank God he's very well now, but we had a preemie at 24 weeks, that's 5.5 months, and he was very tiny and very sick, and he had a very hard time. And I finally understood what Dayenu meant, because if he was on 75% oxygen instead of 100% oxygen, I felt like, Dayenu, like, thank you. And when he went down to 50% oxygen in his incubator, then I said, oh, thank God. And if his bleeding in his brain, stayed at level 2 and didn't develop to level 3, I was like, oh, thank God, and somebody would ask me, so is he going to go to regular school in the future? And I'm like, regular school? Like, I don't know. He's in an incubator. He's a little, like, I'm like happy when he drank like 3, when he had 3 milliliters of milk. Like, you sort of learn when things are so, and we were davening for every single aspect of his life, right? Every single system in his body was not really ready to be on the outside. But we kind of learned, I really learned what Dayenu meant. I don't think Dayenu means it would have been enough. Like, I don't want more. I think it means, like, that's all we could ask for. That in and of itself is an amazing thing. Thank you for that. And thank you for this. And thank you for the next step. And thank you for the next step. And you sort of start to realize what an incredible miracle our lives are, right? Just getting up in the morning and being able to walk and being able to talk and being able to do all the things that, we stop taking for granted when we realize that they might not be there. And so they're, just to amplify what you said, like, they should have been so thankful God took them out of Egypt and he's providing for them and he's taking them to this amazing land. Like, what are you complaining about, right? And that's not okay. They have to have hakarat hatov. They have to appreciate. So to complain for the sake of complaining with no reason, you're hungry, you're thirsty, I get it, right? That's reasonable. But to just complain, that's just lack of hakarat hatov. And similarly, in the next passage in Baalotcha, which is in Perek Aleph, just the next psukim, it says, okay, they have a desire, right? And they vayashuvu vayivku gam b'nei Israel. So these asafsuf, whoever they were, these extra people, it's not clear exactly who they were, right? Chazal say it was like some Egyptians who came out with us. Anyway, so or people from other nations. Vayashuvu vayivku gam b'nei Israel vayamru mi yachilenu basar. Who will give us meat? Zacharnu et hadaga asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam. We remember the fish we ate for free in Egypt. And then they start listing things. The squash, the watermelons, right? The onions, the garlic. Ata nafshenu yavisha en kol bilti el haman einenu. And now our soul is dry. There's nothing except for the man that we just look at the man all the time. Okay. And the pasuk continues on to say that the man tasted like lishad hashamen. It tasted like a pancake or something, something that was fried in oil. Okay. Which everybody knows is delicious, right? But anyway, so what's going on here, right? They're asking for meat. Why is Hashem gets very angry with this, right? Why is Hashem angry with this? After all, didn't they ask for food also in Bishalach? And they even mentioned the flesh pots that they were sitting on, and they were, we love the meat and we love the bread. And why now is Hashem so angry, right? Right, Hashem responds. Moshe responds with I don't know what to do with these people, right? And why'd you do this to me? And am I their nursemaid? I can't handle them. And Hashem gives them a tremendous amount of meat and a terrible plague. Okay, so Michelle says that they need to learn to be satisfied with what they have, and they're forgetting how bad it really was, right? And imagining how great it was. And we're all very good at that, right? Like, we make a decision, we realize the decision is a good one. We just, we may realize the benefits and the drawbacks, but we say, okay, this is what we're doing. Then as soon as something bad happens, we're like, oh, why did I ever do that? Things were so much better before, right? Okay, so Am Yisrael, we're faced with that malady too, right? They suffer from that malady too. But I think here that I agree with Michelle that the difference is that first of all, they didn't say, please may we have meat in addition to this delicious man that we appreciate so much, right? They're like, ugh, we can't stand this, man. I don't know, we're so dry and it's so awful, and right, with nothing to look at but the man all day, like the man that is falling from heaven every morning for them, right? They started to take it for granted, and instead of asking nicely for meat or for some variety or whatever it was, they complain and they have no hakarat hatov. They don't, they don't appreciate what they have, and maybe the glorifying of Mitzrayim in the process is also insulting, right? And Hashem responds with this plague, with a lot of slav, a lot of this meat, right? And then this terrible plague. Here, Rabbi Sacks actually makes a very, very beautiful point. Rabbi Sacks, he talks about Moshe's response here. Moshe really, in Rabbi Sacks' words, has just a breakdown here. He just can't, he says he can't do it anymore. He says, why have you done this to me? Moshe says, why didn't I find favor in your eyes? Why are you giving this to me? Did I conceive this nation? Did I give birth to them? That you're saying carry them, carry them like a baby? where am I going to give them all? Where am I going to get all this meat for them that they're crying? I can't handle it. If you're going to do that to me, Hargeni na harog. Please just kill me now. And Rabbi Sacks has a very beautiful turn of phrase here. He says, sometimes in a leader's life, the sun of hope is eclipsed by the clouds of doubt. And it's not just the clouds of doubt about whether the people are worthy, but he's doubting himself. He's saying, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. Just kill me now, right? And he compares it to when Eliyahu says, I can't continue, right? We have a few leaders in Tanakh who say, I just can't go on anymore. I can't do it. And this is Moshe's, right? Moshe was the faithful leader of the Jewish people, says, Hashem, I can't do it. And the way that actually Rabbi Sacks sees it very beautifully, that when the 70 elders are appointed to help Moshe, that what Rabbi Sacks says is actually a very original idea. He says that this was a gift to Moshe to see his influence on others. That it says that I'll take a little bit of your spirit and I'll put it on them. And seeing that his spirit could go into someone else and that they could then arise and be prophets too, like he is, was not just to help him, right? Have 70 more people who could, do things with the nation, which is, I think, like how many of us understand that passage. But actually, Rabbi Sacks suggests that it was seeing the influence that he had on people. And so often people don't get to see that in their lifetime. Right. I'm actually thinking, I teach at Midrash Lindenbaum and I direct the overseas program there. We just lost Midrash Lindenbaum and the Or Torah Stone family lost somebody incredible just over a week ago, Tova Ryan, who was the director of the overseas program for 26 years, actually starting the year I was there until her retirement about 7 years ago. And she was a person who had such an incredible impact on people. I'm starting to tear up, I'm sorry, such an incredible impact on people. And with her humility and her kindness and her Yosher, her incredible sense of right and wrong, and just her incredible sensitivity and kindness with which she approached every single thing. When she retired, we gave her a book of letters from the people that she, from alumni over the years whom she had influenced, and we were sharing with her husband and children, so many more things that have come in since then. But that gift of being able to see, of a leader being able to see their impact. And of course, Moshe had such an incredible impact on Israel, right? And not only in his lifetime, but all of these many years later, and that sort of gave Moshe a new ability to continue with his work. And so these two cases in Bahalotcha, if we go back to our question, are essentially, number one is a complaint for the sake of complaining, and number two is a request for meat, but coming along with a very unappreciative, right? A deep lack of appreciation for all that God is giving them. And that is responded to with anger and with punishment. Similarly, in Parshat Shlach, that in Chutz La'aretz we just read this past Shabbat, the people hearing the report of the spies, it says that they cry, "Vayilonu al Moshe v'al Aaron kol b'nei Yisrael vayamru alehem kol ha'edah." All the nation says, "Lu matnu be'eretz Mitzrayim o b'midbar hazeh." Lu matnu. Again, they're wishing to die. The Jewish people keep on asking if they could have died here or there, right? Okay, they keep on saying that. Sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not okay, right? But they like to say that. We wish we had died in Mitzrayim or in the Midbar. We wish we had died. Why did God bring us to this land? Okay, to linpol b'cherev, to die by the sword. Our wives and our children will be taken captive. Halotov lanu shu mitzrayma. Let's go back. And right after that, Kalev and Yoshua say, no, we can do it, right? It's wonderful. It's a great land. And if Hashem wants us, we can do anything, right? And what is Hashem's response to that? Threat of total destruction. Moshe prays, and instead their death takes place over 40 years, and their children will enter the land. Why here, when they are faced with the concern of dying at the hand of the sword, kind of similar to the facing the Red Sea and drowning or being killed or taken captive back again by the Egyptians, why now is Hashem so angry with them for saying that they're afraid of the sword, right? What's the difference here? Why is this met with such anger? So I think that again here, it's true that it's natural to be afraid of the sword, right? The same way as it might be natural to, wish you had a little meat or a little variety, right? But here they are choosing to listen to, there are 10 spies who are saying one thing, we're saying things are bad and we can't do it, we cannot do it. And there are 2 spies, right, and Moshe and Aaron who are supporting the side that says we can do it if God helps us, right? And they are choosing to follow the side that is lack of faith in God. Everyone agrees that there's a sword. It's not that there's a debate about that. Everyone agrees that that there are a very powerful nation, very powerful nations in Canaan, right? But what is going on is that the question is, do they have that faith? And I think we could maybe bring in what the first person suggested. They've already had some time, right, in the desert, and they've learned to rely on God, right? They've had a couple of years. They've been getting the water. They've been getting the man. They've gotten whatever. They've gotten meat when they wanted it. They've gotten what they needed and even what they asked for. So it's like they didn't learn the lesson, right? They didn't pass the Amunah test when the practical, case came up. This is what Hashem's been preparing them for. And they are wishing to have died in Egypt or died in the Midbar. And they're so sure that they're going to die, that their children and will be taken captive. We're going back to Egypt. And then Hashem says, okay, like if that's what you want, okay, I'll give that to you. You'll die in the desert. And Moshe davens, and then they get this extension of the punishment, that it's going to take 40 years. All these people will die between the ages of 20 and 60, but they will, but their younger generation will come and will get into the land, and they essentially get what they asked for. Of course, once they get what they asked for, they're very upset. They're like, no, that's terrible. We're gonna go, right? Then some people go, they get beaten back, okay? But I think that the difference here is first of all, that there have been a couple of years, and second of all, that this is not like I'm thirsty and I have no water and I'm going to die if I have no water. This is Hashem promising that He will fight the nations and vanquish them, and they're saying we don't believe that, right? It's, by the way, it's also not just that Hashem is promising them and that He's given them so much over 2 years. That's what He did to Egypt, right? So they also have had experience with God's vanquishing a nation on their behalf. And their lack of faith is unacceptable to Hashem. The last story before our Parsha, Chukat, is after Korach and his people are killed. And this is a really, really interesting one, right? Korach rebels against Hashem, against Moshe and Aaron. And Moshe calls down miracles, and he proves that, Ketoret is dangerous, and you better be really sure you want to be the incense, right? You better be really sure that you deserve to be a Kohen before you take the incense. The 250 men take the incense, and they are killed, right? And Korach, right, and Datan and Abiram swallowed up by the earth, okay? And that's what happens there, right? And then after that experience, the people turn to Moshe and Aaron and say, Atem hamitem et am Hashem. You are killing the people of God. And Hashem is furious, right? Why is Hashem furious? So here, they were not asking for water. They were not asking for mud. They weren't even asking for meat in a not nice way, right? They were essentially taking what was meant to be a proof that that God has chosen a side here and that Moshe and Aaron are the legitimate leaders. And they take that proof and they turn it around. They say, you've killed the people of God. Hashem is furious. Moshe begins to pray. And Moshe sees that, right? Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to destroy them in a moment. I'm going to kill them all in a second. The plague begins before Moshe even can daven, and Moshe says to Aaron, hurry, go take the Ketoret and stop the plague. And Moshe and Aaron does that, and the plague stops, and that's the end of it. Okay, so what we've seen, and this is all the cases, okay, in the Torah where the people complain. We've seen 8 cases, okay? The first 4 where it was right at the beginning and very reasonable requests, even if formulated in not such a great way. Why'd you bring us out? Are there not enough graves? And all of that. And then we've seen 4 more where there was complaining for the sake of complaining, asking for meat in a not nice way, and complaining about the man at the same time. Not having faith in God that he was going to take us into and vanquish the Canaanites, and then having the nerve to suggest that Moshe and Aaron had killed the nation of God right after Hashem had proven that Moshe and Aaron were the right leaders. And Kinneret adds, right, it's like adding themselves to the sin of Korach against the leadership of Moshe and Hashem. Exactly right. Like, it's actually incredible to turn around after that experience and say that, right? It's like incredible in a bad way, right? Okay, so now we get to our parsha. And this is actually really interesting because in our parsha in Chukat, which is seemingly 38 years later, right now we're at the end of our time in the desert. We go back to our case, and again, the people, like, you see this pattern. They say, "V'lu gavanu b'gva'achenu lifnei Hashem." We wish we had died with our brethren before God. And remember what we said at the beginning, right? What is, I'll go back to the main, to the first page of the sources here. Okay. They say, we wish we had died with our brethren, okay, before God, meaning we wish we had been killed in the plague instead of by thirst, because we are so thirsty. Why did you bring us into the Midbar? Why did you take us out of Egypt? This is a terrible place. There's nothing growing here, and there's no water. And Hashem says to them, I'm going to give you water. He asks Moshe and Aaron to talk to the rock. Why does Hashem change back to, right? We had 4 cases where Hashem just gives them what they wanted. We had 4 cases where Hashem gets angry. Why is Hashem giving them what they wanted here? So I think it goes back to what we've been saying, with maybe a little bit an extra level there. First of all, they're asking for water. So this is going back to the times in Parshat Bashalach when they asked for water, which was, reasonable. Okay, let me see what somebody wanted to say. Reconnect them after such a hard time giving what they really need, right? So this is, so I think I want to amplify what you said. I want to pick up on what you said. So first of all, this is a request that is reasonable. There's no water. People need water, and so it's a reasonable request. Now, you would have hoped that 38 years later, right, they would have learned to say, thank you so much for what we had. And we would really appreciate if you could give us some water now, please, as well, right? Meaning more of a Dayenu approach than oh, we wish we had died and there's no pomegranates here and all of that. But perhaps, Michelle, your point is well taken, which is that Hashem is trying to, it's been a long time, right? It's been 38 years. What have they been doing for all that time? Walking around, according to Chazal, digging their graves on Tisha B'Av, lying down in their graves, and then whoever got up had another year, right? It's been a long time. it seems that maybe Hashem didn't talk to them much. We don't hear anything about it. Chazal say that Hashem didn't speak to Moshe all that time. Is an opinion like that? And so maybe Hashem wants to sort of, it's almost like a restart of their beginning in the desert, right? Meaning the beginning in the desert was there wasn't water and we're about to go into Israel. Now we're doing that again. There isn't water, right? And we're about to go into Israel. So Hashem is responding in the same way. It's like a new generation and we're starting again. They're thirsty. Okay, we're going to give them water. Very interestingly, in the next parak though, okay, we have another complaint of the people, and this is the final complaint in the desert. It says, "Vayisume hor hahar." They leave hor hahar. They are going around the land of Edom after Edom has said that they're not allowed to go through, and the people they get impatient. And they say about God and about Moshe, okay, why did you take us out of Egypt to die in the desert? There's no bread, there's no water, and we are sick of the messed up bread, the disgusting bread, whatever that means, okay? And Hashem lets loose on them snakes and scorpions, and they bite the people, and a lot of people die. Okay, so why does Hashem respond in this way to that complaint? So there are a couple of things in common with this complaint and the other complaints that were that we saw that Hashem responded negatively to. First of all, what's missing? They're not missing water and they're not missing bread and they have everything they need. Why are they complaining in this story? They're sick of it. They're just tired. They're just impatient. They just lost it, right? And again, as Michelle points out, they're not being grateful. You're sick of the man that arrives from heaven every day? Really? Right? Okay. So Hashem is very angry and he lets loose the snakes and the scorpions. Now here we see something different from what happens in all the other cases. And this, I think, is a turning point for the Jewish people. It says, "Vayavo ha'am el Moshe vayomru chatanu ki tibarnu b'Hashem vavach. Hitpalel el Hashem v'yaser me'elenu et hanachash." The people come to Moshe and they say, "We sinned because we spoke against Hashem and against you. Please daven for us and get rid of the nachash." And now that we see the people saying that, doesn't it make you think, hey, wait a second. In the Mitonanim case, they just get burned and nobody says sorry. In the Kivrot Ta'ava, where they complain and they talk about all of their, all of the different vegetables that they miss, right? There's a plague. They never say sorry afterwards. In Shlach, right? They say, oh, we really want to go. Let's go, right? But they don't really take responsibility, because if they took responsibility, they would not have gone, the Ma'apilim would not have gone and tried to conquer the land when Moshe said no. And Korach and his name, and also after Korach, they don't say, oh, wow, we get it, right? And here, for the first time in the Jewish people's history, since they left Egypt, they say, wow, we were wrong. You're protecting us all this time. In fact, some Mefarshim say Vayishalach. It doesn't say Vayishlach, that he sent. Vayishalach sounds like it means that formulation means he released. It's almost like this whole time, right? We know that God was protecting the Jewish people, right? He was not allowing all of the elements to affect them. And Hashem is like, oh, you're not happy? Okay, I'll just withdraw a little bit and let's see how it goes. And then they're like, oh my gosh, like we didn't realize how much protection we had and we were wrong and we shouldn't have spoken like that. And then the solution is that Achash and Choshet, right? is the copper snake, where they look up at the snake and they become healed. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah says that a snake does not make them sick or healthy. It's looking up to God. It's looking up to Avihim Shebashamayim, similar to the hands of Moshe during the war against Amalek, right? That is what actually, that is what they were trying to, that was what Hashem was trying to teach them. And Moshe was trying to teach them to look up to heaven and see from whence cometh our help. And then in the next verses, it says, Az Yashir Yisrael et Hashira Hazot. And then Am Yisrael sings a shira, which reminds us of Parshat B'Shalach again, right? When does it say, Az Yashir Moshe U'bnei Yisrael Hashira Hazot, right? Moshe and Am Yisrael sing a shira. After this episode, Am Yisrael sings shira, sings a song of praise to God, once again, for thanking Hashem for his help and for his kindness. And so it's actually a really beautiful ending to this whole litany of complaints, right? Is that, yes, first of all, Hashem provides for us when we need something. Ideally, we ask in a nice way and in an appreciative way. When we really need something, what Hashem does not have patience for is complaining for the sake of complaining, or being kfui tova, being ungrateful. But what we also see is that sometimes when we make a mistake, because like Rabbi Sacks speaks of Moshe, that we just can't see the light and we can't see the sun, that there is this opportunity for tshuva, there's this opportunity for repentance, there's this opportunity for reconnecting with Hashem, and please God for maintaining that relationship, Am Yisrael with Hashem, and each one of us in our own lives with God. Wishing everybody a wonderful week and Shavua Tov.
Thank you very much, Rabbanit Meir, for your wonderful Divrei Torah, and thank you everyone for joining us. We are taking a summer break for the series, and if you would like to keep in touch with everything that Mizrahi is doing, there's plenty more programming which is happening and which is coming, and so we look forward to you joining us for other Mizrahi programs. Thank you everyone, and Shavua Tov.
Thank you.